In 1959, the quiet Portuguese city of Evora became the stage for one of the most bewildering phenomena in recorded history. Thousands of residents stopped what they were doing and looked up at the afternoon sky as something extraordinary began to unfold above them. A mysterious object moved silently across the blue expanse, leaving behind what witnesses would later describe as angel hair, countless silvery filaments that drifted down like snow blanketing the entire city in an ethereal web of unknown origin. But here's where this story takes a turn that still baffles scientists today. When locals rushed to collect samples of these strange fibers and brought them to laboratories for analysis, researchers made a discovery that defied everything they thought they knew about our world. Under powerful microscopes, these delicate threads revealed something that shouldn't have existed. Microscopic organisms resembling sea anemones, all encased in a semi-transparent mucus containing biological structures that had never been documented in the local ecosystem or anywhere else on Earth. And then, just as mysteriously as they had appeared, every single filament vanished completely within hours. Not a trace remained for further study. No evidence. No explanation, just the bewildered testimonies of an entire city that had witnessed something that science still cannot explain more than 6 decades later. This isn't just another unsolved mystery. It's a glimpse into a reality where the impossible becomes undeniable, where the boundaries of human knowledge crumble in the face of phenomena that exist beyond our comprehension. The angel hair incident of Evora represents something far more profound than a simple anomaly. It's evidence that our world harbors secrets so extraordinary that they challenge the very foundations of what we believe to be possible. What if I told you that Evora's angel hair is just the beginning? What if there are dozens of other mysteries scattered across our planet and beyond? Phenomena so inexplicable that they've left the world's leading scientists, archaeologists, and researchers completely stumped. What if the reality we think we understand is actually just a thin veneer covering a universe filled with impossibilities? Today, we're diving deep into 5 categories of unsolved mysteries that have one thing in common: they refuse to be explained away. These aren't urban legends or conspiracy theories born in internet forums. These are documented, researched, and verified phenomena that have been studied by the most brilliant minds of our time. Yet they remain as mysterious today as they were when first discovered. From cosmic anomalies that suggest our understanding of space is fundamentally flawed to biological discoveries that rewrite the rules of life itself, from archaeological finds that challenge everything we know about human history to supernatural phenomena with real-world evidence and historical legends that turn out to be based on documented facts. These mysteries span every field of human knowledge and demolish the comfortable assumptions we've built about our world. We'll explore metallic masses 5 times the size of Hawaii, buried beneath the moon's surface, discovered through gravitational field measurements that no conventional theory can adequately explain. We'll examine ancient structures whose mathematical precision suggests knowledge that their builders supposedly couldn't have possessed. We'll investigate biological systems thriving in conditions so extreme they shouldn't support life. Yet they do, in ways that expand our understanding of what life actually means. These aren't just academic curiosities gathering dust in research journals. Each mystery we'll explore today represents a crack in the facade of human understanding, a place where the known world gives way to something far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. They're reminders that despite all our technological advances and scientific breakthroughs, we're still living on a planet, in a universe, that holds secrets we can barely begin to fathom. What makes these mysteries even more compelling is that they are not relics of a distant past safely contained in history books. Many of these phenomena continue to occur, continue to be studied, and continue to produce new evidence that only deepens the puzzle. Modern technology, instead of solving these riddles, often makes them more mysterious by revealing layers of complexity that previous generations couldn't even detect. The implications of what we're about to explore together extend far beyond mere curiosity. If even one of these mysteries were to be fully understood, it could revolutionize our comprehension of physics, biology, history, or the very nature of reality itself. They represent the frontiers of human knowledge, the places where our maps of understanding simply end with the ancient cartographer's warning, "Here be dragons." So prepare yourself for a journey into the impossible. We're about to explore mysteries that will challenge everything you think you know about the world we inhabit. Some of these phenomena might make you question the nature of reality itself. Others might leave you wondering what other secrets are hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Are you ready to discover just how mysterious our world really is? Let's begin this exploration of the impossible, because sometimes the most incredible truths are the ones science hasn't figured out how to explain yet. Before we dive into the heart of these extraordinary mysteries, we need to understand why they matter so profoundly to our understanding of reality itself. These aren't just curious anomalies or entertaining puzzles. They represent fundamental challenges to the very frameworks we use to make sense of our world. Each unexplained phenomenon forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth that human knowledge, despite all our scientific achievements, remains remarkably limited. Throughout history, the greatest leaps in human understanding have come not from confirming what we already believed, but from encountering phenomena that shattered our existing models of reality. When astronomers first observed that the universe was expanding, it contradicted everything they thought they knew about cosmic mechanics. When quantum physicists discovered that particles could exist in multiple states simultaneously, it demolished classical notions of how matter behaves. The mysteries we're exploring today represent similar moments of potential revelation. Points where our current understanding breaks down and something entirely new might emerge. What makes contemporary unexplained phenomena particularly fascinating is the sophistication of the tools we now have to study them. We possess scanning technologies that can peer deep into ancient structures without disturbing them, genetic analysis that can trace biological origins across millennia, and gravitational field measurements precise enough to detect massive objects buried miles beneath planetary surfaces. Yet these advanced instruments often reveal not answers, but deeper layers of mystery that previous generations couldn't even perceive. Consider the paradox this creates. The more precisely we can measure and analyze these phenomena, the more inexplicable they often become. The angel hair of Evora wasn't just mysterious to the naked eye. Laboratory analysis made it even more baffling by revealing biological components that shouldn't exist. Modern gravitational mapping doesn't just confirm there's something unusual beneath the moon's surface. It reveals an object so massive and positioned so precisely that no current theory adequately explains its presence. This isn't a failure of science. It's evidence of science working exactly as it should. The scientific method doesn't just seek to confirm existing theories. It actively searches for anomalies that might reveal new truths about reality. Every unexplained phenomenon represents a potential breakthrough waiting to happen, a door to understanding that we haven't yet learned how to open. The categories of mysteries we're exploring today span virtually every field of human inquiry, yet they share certain characteristics that make them particularly significant. First, they're all supported by solid physical evidence. These aren't just stories or legends, but documented phenomena that can be studied, measured, and verified by independent researchers. Second, they resist conventional explanation despite being subjected to rigorous scientific analysis. Third, they often reveal interconnections between different fields of knowledge, suggesting that our academic boundaries might be artificial constraints that prevent us from seeing larger patterns. From a historical perspective, unexplained phenomena have always played a crucial role in advancing human knowledge. What we now understand as natural processes, from earthquakes to solar eclipses to disease transmission, were once complete mysteries that inspired everything from religious ceremonies to elaborate mythologies. The difference today is that we have far more sophisticated tools for investigation, yet we're still discovering phenomena that challenge our fundamental assumptions about how the world works. The psychological impact of encountering truly unexplained phenomena cannot be understated. These mysteries force us to confront the limitations of human understanding in ways that can be both humbling and exhilarating. They remind us that reality is far stranger and more complex than our everyday experience suggests. For some, this uncertainty is unsettling. It challenges the comfortable notion that science has most of the important questions figured out. For others, it's deeply inspiring. Proof that the universe still holds countless wonders waiting to be discovered. What's particularly intriguing about the mysteries we'll explore is how they seem to cluster around certain themes that appear repeatedly across different fields and time periods. We see evidence of advanced knowledge in ancient structures, biological systems operating in seemingly impossible conditions, objects and phenomena that suggest technologies or natural processes we don't yet understand, and historical events that blur the line between documented fact and apparent impossibility. These patterns raise profound questions about the nature of human knowledge itself. Are we missing fundamental principles that would make these mysteries comprehensible? Do these phenomena represent glimpses of natural laws or technological capabilities that lie beyond our current scientific paradigms? Or are they evidence of processes so complex that our linear reductionist approach to understanding might be fundamentally inadequate to grasp them? The interdisciplinary nature of these mysteries also highlights something crucial about the evolution of human knowledge. Traditional academic boundaries, separating physics from biology, archaeology from astronomy, history from materials science, often break down when we encounter phenomena that don't respect these artificial divisions. Some of the most promising research into unexplained phenomena comes from collaborative efforts that bring together experts from multiple fields, suggesting that the answers we seek might require entirely new approaches to investigation. Perhaps most importantly, These mysteries serve as reminders that the universe is under no obligation to conform to human expectations or limitations. The fact that something seems impossible based on our current understanding doesn't make it any less real if the evidence supports its existence. Throughout history, countless phenomena that were once considered impossible, from powered flight to quantum entanglement to genetic modification, eventually became not just possible, but commonplace. As we embark on this exploration of the unexplained, we're essentially taking a guided tour through the frontiers of human knowledge. These are the places where our maps of understanding run out, where the familiar gives way to the extraordinary, and where the next great breakthroughs in human comprehension might be waiting to be discovered. The 5 categories we'll explore represent different aspects of this vast landscape of mystery. Each offers its own unique insights into the limitations and possibilities of human understanding, and together they paint a picture of a reality far more complex and wonderful than we might have imagined. So as we prepare to dive into these specific mysteries, remember that we're not just exploring curious anomalies. We're investigating potential windows into new ways of understanding the universe itself. Main content: the mysteries, cosmic and space anomalies. The metallic mass beneath the moon. Deep beneath the gray, lifeless surface of the moon lies something that defies every conventional explanation we have for how celestial bodies form and evolve. In the South Pole Aitken Basin, the largest impact crater on our nearest celestial neighbor, scientists have discovered a metallic mass so enormous and so precisely positioned that it challenges our fundamental understanding of lunar geology and the history of our solar system. This isn't just a small anomaly hidden in moon rocks that only specialists care about. We're talking about a metallic object 5 times the size of the Hawaiian island chain, buried hundreds of kilometers beneath the lunar surface. To put this in perspective, if this mass were on Earth, it would stretch from New York to Florida and be buried deeper than the deepest ocean trenches. The discovery came through painstaking analysis of gravitational data collected by orbiting spacecraft, revealing gravitational anomalies so significant that something massive and dense had to be causing them. The research team from Baylor University, who first detected this anomaly, used the most sophisticated gravitational field measurement techniques available to modern science. What they found shouldn't exist according to our current models of how the moon formed. The mass is positioned with such precision beneath the impact basin that it suggests either an incredibly unlikely cosmic coincidence or processes we don't yet understand. The leading theory attempts to explain this as the remnant of a colossal iron-nickel meteorite that collided with the moon billions of years ago. According to this hypothesis, the impact was so massive that it left not just the crater we can see on the surface, but also buried the meteorite's core deep within the lunar interior, where it slowly cooled and was gradually covered by eons of dust and debris. It's a compelling explanation that fits with what we know about the violent early history of our solar system when massive objects regularly collided with planets and moons. However, this conventional explanation faces several problems that keep lunar scientists awake at night. The positioning is almost too perfect. The mass sits directly beneath the center of the impact basin, in a way that suggests far more precision than random cosmic collisions typically produce. Moreover, computer simulations of such massive impacts don't consistently reproduce the specific gravitational signatures observed by the orbital measurements. An alternative theory suggests this metallic mass might be the result of the Moon's own geological processes during its earliest formation. In this scenario, heavy metallic elements separated from lighter materials through gravitational differentiation and somehow concentrated into this massive underground formation. This would make the mass a kind of geological artifact from the Moon's birth, preserving information about the earliest phases of lunar development that we've never been able to access. The implications of either explanation are staggering. If it's truly a meteorite remnant, this discovery provides direct evidence of the scale and frequency of cosmic impacts during the solar system's chaotic early period. The mass would represent one of the largest intact pieces of an ancient cosmic collision ever discovered, essentially a time capsule from the solar system's violent youth, buried beneath the Moon's surface for billions of years. But if it represents lunar geological processes, the discovery could revolutionize our understanding of how rocky bodies form and evolve. It might contain clues about the Moon's internal structure and composition that could reshape theories about lunar formation and development. Some researchers even speculate that similar masses might exist beneath other impact sites, waiting to be discovered. What makes this mystery particularly tantalizing is that we're so close to potentially solving it, yet still so far away. All our information comes from indirect measurements, gravitational field data, and computer simulations. No direct samples have ever been retrieved from such depths, and with current technology, we can't physically access the mass to determine its true nature and composition. Could this metallic mass be the key to understanding not just the Moon's history, but the violent processes that shaped our entire solar system? What other secrets might be buried beneath the surfaces of other worlds, waiting for our instruments to become sensitive enough to detect them? The pyramid's impossible. Coordinates. Of all the theories surrounding the Great Pyramid of Giza, perhaps none is more mind-bending than the apparent mathematical relationship between its geographic location and one of the fundamental constants of physics. According to this controversial hypothesis, the pyramid's latitude coordinates, 29979245.8 degrees north, correspond almost exactly to the numerical value of the speed of light measured in meters per second, 299,792,458. This isn't just a rough approximation that requires creative interpretation to make work. The correlation is precise enough to make even skeptical scientists pause and consider the implications. If this relationship is intentional rather than coincidental, it suggests that the ancient Egyptian builders possessed knowledge of physics that wasn't supposed to exist for thousands of years after the pyramid's construction. The discovery of this numerical relationship emerged from modern attempts to find hidden mathematical patterns in ancient monuments. Researchers analyzing the pyramid's precise geographic position noticed that when expressed in decimal degrees, the latitude matched the speed of light to an extraordinary degree of accuracy. The speed of light measured at exactly 299,792,458 meters per second in a vacuum is one of the fundamental constants of the universe, a figure that wasn't determined by modern science until the development of sophisticated laser measurement techniques in the 20th century. Proponents of this theory argue that such precision cannot be accidental. They point out that if the ancient builders truly knew the speed of light, then the pyramid's placement represents a deliberate encoding of advanced physical knowledge into the monument's geographic coordinates. This leads to speculation about how such information could have been obtained thousands of years before the development of modern physics. Some researchers have proposed that this knowledge could indicate contact with technologically advanced civilizations, possibly extraterrestrial in origin. Others suggest it might be evidence of lost human civilizations that achieved scientific understanding far beyond what mainstream archaeology recognizes. A few even speculate about time travel or other exotic explanations for how future knowledge could have been embedded in ancient structures. The most provocative interpretation suggests that the pyramid's location was chosen specifically to encode the speed of light as a message for future generations. According to this theory, the builders understood that eventually human civilization would develop the mathematical and technological sophistication necessary to recognize the relationship, making the pyramid a kind of time capsule containing advanced scientific information. However, mainstream scientists and archaeologists have raised numerous objections to these interpretations. The most fundamental criticism centers on the anachronistic nature of the correlation itself. The metric system, which provides the units for measuring the speed of light in meters per second, was only developed in the late 18th century. Ancient Egyptians used completely different systems of measurement based on cubits and other units that have no relationship to modern metric measurements. Furthermore, the current system of geographic coordinates, expressing latitude and longitude in decimal degrees, is a relatively recent development that came into widespread use only in the past few centuries. Ancient Egyptian surveyors and architects relied on astronomical observations and traditional landmarks for orientation, not the mathematical coordinate systems we use today. Critics argue that finding numerical relationships between ancient monuments and modern physical constants is a classic example of retrofitting, imposing contemporary mathematical frameworks onto ancient structures in ways that would have been meaningless to their original builders. They point out that with enough creative interpretation, almost any numerical relationship can be discovered between virtually any two sets of measurements. Yet the precision of the correlation continues to intrigue researchers. Even if the relationship is coincidental, the mathematical elegance of the match raises questions about the nature of coincidence itself, and whether there might be deeper patterns underlying the structure of reality that we don't yet understand. The mystery also highlights the ongoing tension between conventional archaeological interpretation and alternative theories about ancient knowledge. While mainstream archaeology emphasizes the remarkable achievements of ancient civilizations within their historical context, alternative researchers argue that some accomplishments suggest capabilities beyond what conventional timelines allow. What if ancient builders did possess advanced knowledge that we're only now beginning to rediscover? Or does this apparent correlation represent the human tendency to find meaningful patterns, even in random data? Could there be other ancient structures encoding scientific information in ways we haven't yet learned to recognize the hidden chambers of Giza? In 2017, the most famous monument in the world revealed that it still held secrets no human had ever seen. Using cutting-edge Morn tomography, a non-invasive scanning technique that employs cosmic rays to map internal structures, the Scan Pyramids project made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Deep within the Great Pyramid of Giza, they found a massive void that no previous exploration had ever detected. This isn't a small cavity or a minor architectural feature that earlier researchers simply missed. The newly discovered space measures approximately 30 meters in length, making it comparable in size to the pyramid's famous Grand Gallery. What makes this discovery even more extraordinary is that this void appears to be completely isolated. It doesn't connect to any of the known chambers, passages, or tunnels that archaeologists have mapped over centuries of exploration. The Scan Pyramids project represents a collaboration between international scientists and the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities using technology that sounds like science fiction but is grounded in solid physics. Muon tomography works by detecting cosmic ray particles called muons as they pass through different materials. Dense materials like stone absorb more muons than empty spaces, creating a kind of X-ray vision that can reveal internal structures without requiring any physical intrusion into the monument. The results showed unmistakably that above the Grand Gallery and near the King's Chamber, there exists an empty space that shares similar dimensions to known chambers but serves an unknown purpose. The void's position and orientation suggest it was deliberately constructed as part of the pyramid's original design, not created by later damage or natural processes. The discovery immediately sparked intense debate about the void's purpose and contents. Some archaeologists theorize it might be a structural feature designed to reduce pressure on the chambers below. Ancient Egyptian architects were sophisticated engineers who understood the immense weight of stone pressing down on internal spaces. Creating empty areas above critical chambers could have been an elegant solution to distributing structural stress. Others believe the space might contain archaeological treasures that have remained untouched for over 4 millennia. The pyramid was built as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu, and it's possible that this hidden chamber contains burial goods, religious artifacts, or other materials that could revolutionize our understanding of ancient Egyptian civilization. The prospect of an intact, unopened chamber within the Great Pyramid represents an archaeologist's ultimate dream. More speculative theories suggest the void might have served ritual or ceremonial functions that we don't yet understand. Ancient Egyptian religious practices were incredibly complex, involving elaborate ceremonies and symbolic arrangements that modern scholars are still trying to decipher. The hidden chamber might have played a role in religious rituals related to the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife or other spiritual practices. The most intriguing aspect of this discovery is what it reveals about the limits of human exploration. Despite centuries of investigation by some of history's most determined archaeologists, the Great Pyramid was still hiding major features in plain sight. If such a massive void could remain undetected until 2017, what other secrets might be concealed within this ancient wonder? The discovery also raises technical questions about how the chamber was constructed and accessed. If it truly has no connection to the pyramid's known passage system, how did ancient builders access it during construction? How did they remove construction materials and workers once the space was completed? The logistics of creating an isolated chamber within such a massive structure represent engineering challenges that we're still trying to understand. Current technology doesn't allow researchers to explore the void directly without potentially damaging the pyramid, a risk that Egyptian authorities understandably refuse to take with one of humanity's most precious monuments. Future technological developments might provide non-invasive ways to investigate the chamber's contents. But for now, its secrets remain tantalizing out of reach. The hidden chamber discovery has also inspired new searches for additional voids within the pyramid complex. If one major space remained undetected for so long, there might be others waiting to be found. Some researchers speculate about interconnected networks of hidden chambers that could contain entire treasure troves of ancient artifacts and information. What purpose could justify the enormous effort required to construct such a precisely positioned hidden chamber? Are there other ancient monuments around the world concealing similar secrets, waiting for technology to become sophisticated enough to reveal them? Cosmic and space anomalies. The cosmic mysteries we've explored reveal a pattern that should make us profoundly humble about the scope of human knowledge. Whether we're looking at metallic masses buried beneath the moon's surface, impossible mathematical relationships encoded in ancient monuments, or hidden chambers that evaded detection for millennia, each discovery forces us to confront the limitations of our understanding. These aren't just isolated anomalies. They represent systematic gaps in our knowledge of how the universe works and how ancient civilizations achieved their remarkable accomplishments. The metallic mass beneath the moon challenges our models of planetary formation and cosmic impact. The pyramid's coordinate relationship questions our assumptions about ancient scientific knowledge. The hidden chambers prove that even our most studied monuments can still surprise us. What connects these mysteries is their suggestion that reality operates according to principles and patterns we haven't yet learned to recognize. They hint at a universe far more complex and interconnected than our current scientific models can fully explain, and they suggest that human capabilities, both ancient and modern, might be far greater than we typically acknowledge. As we move forward to explore other categories of unexplained phenomena, keep in mind this fundamental question. If we're still discovering such profound mysteries in domains we thought we understood, what else might we be missing about the true nature of our world? Supernatural and unexplained phenomena. The angel hair of Evora. We return now to the mystery that opened our journey, the angel hair phenomenon that blanketed the Portuguese city of Evora in 1959, leaving behind questions that remain unanswered more than 6 decades later. But as we examine this case more deeply, we discover layers of strangeness that make it even more baffling than first appearances suggest. The event began on a clear afternoon, when thousands of residents witnessed an unidentified flying object moving slowly across the sky above their city. This wasn't just a brief sighting by a few individuals. The object was visible for an extended period, observed by people throughout Evora, from multiple vantage points. What happened next transformed a UFO sighting into something far more mysterious and tangible. As the object passed overhead, the sky began to fill with countless fine filaments that drifted down like snow covering buildings, streets, vehicles, and vegetation throughout the city. Witnesses described the fibers as resembling silk or cotton, but with an unusual silvery quality that caught the sunlight as they fell. The sheer volume of material was staggering, enough to blanket an entire city in what appeared to be organic threads of unknown origin. Local residents and authorities quickly began collecting samples of the mysterious fibers, eager to understand what had fallen from their sky. The samples were rushed to laboratories for analysis, where researchers made discoveries that defied every conventional explanation they could devise. Under microscopic examination, the filaments revealed a complex internal structure containing what appeared to be microscopic organisms. These weren't simple bacteria or other microorganisms that might be expected in atmospheric samples. Instead, the fibers contained structures that resembled sea anemones, complex multicellular organisms with tentacle-like projections and sophisticated internal anatomy. All of these organisms were encased in a semi-transparent mucus that had no equivalent in any known biological system. Most disturbing of all these organisms had never been documented anywhere in the local ecosystem, or for that matter, anywhere else on Earth. The biological analysis suggested that these weren't terrestrial life forms, or at least not life forms that had ever been catalogued by science. The cellular structures, the biochemical composition, and the morphological characteristics all pointed to organisms that shouldn't exist, according to our understanding of Earth's biosphere. Yet here they were falling from the sky above a Portuguese city in broad daylight. But the story takes an even stranger turn. Just a few hours after the initial collection, every single filament began to dissolve or decompose at an unprecedented rate. Researchers watched in amazement as their carefully preserved samples simply vanished, leaving no trace behind for further study. This wasn't gradual decomposition like normal organic matter. It was complete disappearance, as if the material had never existed at all. The rapid dissolution of the samples has prevented any definitive analysis of their true nature and origin. Some researchers managed to document their initial observations and take preliminary measurements, but the complete disappearance of all physical evidence has left the scientific community with more questions than answers. No subsequent attempts to recreate the conditions or locate similar materials have been successful. Several theories have been proposed to explain the Evora incident, but none adequately address all the observed phenomena. The most conventional explanation suggests that the filaments were spider silk dispersed by unusual atmospheric conditions. During certain weather patterns, spiders can release massive quantities of silk that gets carried by air currents and eventually falls to Earth over wide areas. This phenomenon, known as ballooning, can indeed create the appearance of fibers falling from the sky. However, several aspects of the Evora incident don't fit this explanation. The microscopic organisms found within the fibers bear no resemblance to spiders or any other arachnids. The rapid decomposition of the samples is unlike anything observed in spider silk, which typically persists for extended periods under normal conditions. Most importantly, the volume and consistency of the material was far greater than any documented case of spider ballooning. Alternative theories propose that the filaments might have originated from very high layers of the atmosphere, possibly carrying microorganisms that exist in atmospheric zones we rarely study. Some scientists speculate about the possibility of airborne ecosystems existing at altitudes where traditional biological surveys have never detected life. These high-altitude organisms might have characteristics so different from surface life that they appear alien to our Earth-based biological classifications. The most provocative theories suggest that the angel hair phenomenon represents evidence of extraterrestrial visitation. According to this interpretation, the filaments might be some form of alien technology or biological material that was either deliberately released or accidentally dispersed during the UFO sighting. The rapid decomposition could be explained as a built-in feature designed to prevent extended analysis by terrestrial scientists. What makes the Evora case particularly significant is that it's not an isolated incident. Similar angel hair phenomena have been reported from various locations around the world, often in connection with UFO sightings or other unexplained aerial events. However, in most cases, the material disappears before scientific analysis can be conducted, leaving researchers with only eyewitness accounts and no physical evidence. The interdisciplinary nature of this mystery highlights the challenges faced by scientists trying to study unexplained phenomena. The incident involves elements of meteorology, biology, chemistry, physics, and possibly even aerospace technology. Understanding what really happened in Evora might require expertise from multiple fields working together in ways that traditional academic boundaries don't easily accommodate. Perhaps most importantly, the angel hair phenomenon forces us to confront the possibility that our planet's biosphere might be far more complex and mysterious than we realize. If the organisms found in the Evora samples were truly unknown to science, it suggests that there are forms of life existing in our environment that we haven't yet learned to detect or study. The implications for biology and our understanding of life on Earth could be revolutionary. What would it mean for our understanding of life if organisms like those found in the angel hair actually exist? Could there be entire ecosystems floating above our heads that we've never noticed? And what might their existence tell us about the possibilities for life in other environments throughout the universe? The non-human handprints of the Sahara. Deep within the vast expanse of the Sahara Desert, in caves that have remained hidden from human civilization for millennia, archaeologists have discovered rock art that challenges our understanding of prehistoric human culture and the relationship between our ancestors and the natural world. These aren't typical cave paintings depicting human figures or hunting scenes. Instead, they feature something far more mysterious: handprints that clearly don't belong to human beings. The discovery was made by a research team investigating ancient settlement patterns in what is now one of the most inhospitable regions on Earth. The Sahara wasn't always the arid wasteland we know today. Roughly 8,000 years ago, this region enjoyed a much wetter climate that supported diverse wildlife and human communities. Rivers flowed through areas that are now endless dunes and vegetation-covered landscapes that have been barren for millennia. Within these ancient caves, researchers found extensive rock art that provides a window into this lost world. Alongside typical human handprints and familiar artistic motifs, they discovered something unprecedented: clearly defined prints of hands or appendages that display anatomical features unlike anything in the human lineage. These prints show elongated fingers, unusual proportions, and structural characteristics that don't match any known primate species. The non-human prints appear alongside human artwork in ways that suggest they were created during the same time periods, possibly even during the same artistic sessions. This proximity isn't accidental. The arrangement suggests a deliberate relationship between human artists and whatever creatures made the other prints. The positioning and context indicate that these weren't random markings, but intentional artistic expressions created in collaboration with or acknowledgement of non-human intelligence. Detailed analysis of the hand impressions has ruled out most conventional explanations. These aren't the paws of known African mammals, nor do they match the appendages of any documented primate species. The proportions and joint structures are distinctly hand-like, suggesting creatures with opposable thumbs and fine motor control, but with anatomical variations that place them outside all known taxonomic categories. Researchers have conducted extensive comparisons with both modern and extinct animal bones to identify possible sources for these mysterious prints. The closest matches appear to be certain reptilian species, particularly crocodiles or large lizards, but even these comparisons are problematic. The prints show levels of dexterity and intentionality that are difficult to attribute to reptilian intelligence as we currently understand it. One of the most intriguing aspects of this discovery is what it suggests about prehistoric human attitudes toward non-human intelligence. The fact that these prints appear integrated into human artwork suggests that our ancestors recognized and possibly revered the intelligence of other species in ways that modern humans have largely forgotten. This challenges the anthropocentric view that intelligence and artistic expression are uniquely human characteristics. The artwork's arrangement suggests several possible interpretations of the relationship between humans and these mysterious creatures. Some researchers believe the prints might represent a form of religious or spiritual practice, where humans sought to incorporate the essence or power of other intelligent beings into their sacred art. The non-human prints might have been seen as blessings, protection, or evidence of communication with supernatural entities. Alternative interpretations suggest the prints might document actual cooperation between human communities and unknown species that possessed human-like intelligence and dexterity. This would imply the existence of cognitive capabilities in species that we've either never encountered or never recognized as intelligent. The implications for our understanding of intelligence evolution and interspecies communication would be profound. The geographical and chronological context of these discoveries adds another layer of mystery. The prints date to a period when the Sahara supported complex ecosystems with species diversity far greater than what exists there today. Climate change and desertification might have driven the extinction of entire categories of life forms, including potentially intelligent species that left behind only these enigmatic handprints as evidence of their existence. Modern efforts to identify the source of these prints have employed the most advanced techniques available to archaeological science. Digital imaging, three-dimensional modeling, and comparative anatomical analysis have all been applied to determine what kinds of creatures could have created such prints. Yet despite these sophisticated approaches, the mystery remains unsolved. The possibility that these prints represent evidence of non-human intelligence raises profound questions about the history of consciousness on our planet. If other species possess the cognitive capabilities necessary to engage in artistic expression and symbolic communication, it suggests that intelligence might be far more common in the natural world than we typically assume. Some researchers have speculated about the possibility that these prints might represent evidence of species that achieved levels of intelligence comparable to early humans, but followed completely different evolutionary paths. These creatures might have developed cognitive abilities, social structures, and even forms of culture that we wouldn't recognize as intelligence because they're so different from human patterns. The preservation of these prints in Saharan caves also highlights the role of environmental change in shaping the history of intelligence on Earth. The transformation of the Sahara from a green, habitable region to an arid desert represents one of the most dramatic climate shifts in recent geological history. How many other forms of intelligence might have been lost to similar environmental catastrophes? What if intelligence has evolved multiple times in Earth's history, only to be erased by climate change, extinction events, or other natural disasters? Could there be other archaeological sites around the world preserving evidence of non-human intelligence that we haven't yet learned to recognize or interpret? Supernatural and unexplained phenomena. The supernatural phenomena we've explored share a common thread that should make us reconsider our assumptions about the nature of reality itself. Both the angel hair of Evora and the non-human handprints of the Sahara present us with physical evidence of events that don't fit into our conventional understanding of how the world works. These aren't just stories or legends. They're documented phenomena with tangible evidence that has been studied by credible researchers using scientific methods. Yet they resist explanation through our current knowledge frameworks, forcing us to consider possibilities that challenge fundamental assumptions about biology, intelligence, and the nature of life on Earth. What's particularly striking is how both mysteries suggest the existence of forms of intelligence or biological organization that operate outside our recognized categories, whether we're looking at microscopic organisms with no terrestrial equivalent or evidence of non-human artistic expression. We're confronted with indications that our planet might harbor forms of consciousness and life that we've never properly recognized or understood. These discoveries hint at a reality where the boundaries between the possible and impossible are far more fluid than we typically acknowledge, where our planet's history might include chapters of intelligence and biological diversity that have been lost to time and environmental change. Biological and evolutionary enigmas. The underground biosphere, beneath our feet extending miles down into the Earth's crust, lies one of the most extraordinary discoveries in modern biology. A vast, hidden world teeming with life forms that exist in conditions so extreme they redefine our understanding of what life actually means. This isn't just a small pocket of unusual bacteria found in a deep cave. We're talking about an entire biosphere that contains roughly 1/4 of all living biomass on our planet, thriving in an environment where no life should be able to exist. The discovery of this underground biosphere emerged from the Deep Carbon Observatory, an international research program that began drilling deeper into the Earth than anyone had ever attempted before. What they found challenged every assumption scientists had made about the limits of life and the distribution of living organisms on our planet. These aren't just microbes clinging to existence in harsh conditions. They represent complex, thriving ecosystems that have been operating independently of surface life for potentially billions of years. The conditions in this underground world are beyond anything most surface organisms could survive. Temperatures reach levels that would instantly kill any known surface life form. Pressure is so intense it would crush conventional biological structures. There's no sunlight, no oxygen in many areas, and virtually no external nutrients filtering down from the surface world. Yet somehow life not only exists in this environment, it flourishes. The organisms discovered in these deep environments operate on biological principles that seem almost alien compared to surface life. Instead of relying on sunlight for energy through photosynthesis, many of these deep-dwelling bacteria and archaea use chemosynthesis, converting inorganic compounds like methane, hydrogen sulfide, and various metals into usable energy. They've essentially created their own food webs based on chemistry rather than biology as we typically understand it. Perhaps most remarkably, these organisms live at a pace that makes surface life seem frantically hyperactive by comparison. Some individuals can survive for thousands of years in an almost dormant state, maintaining just the bare minimum metabolic activity necessary to prevent death. Their reproduction cycles are measured in geological timescales rather than the rapid generation turnover we see in surface organisms. The discovery has forced scientists to completely reconsider what we mean by life and where it can exist. These underground organisms have adapted to their extreme environment by developing cellular structures, protective mechanisms, and metabolic processes that were unknown to biology before their discovery. Their cell membranes are reinforced to withstand crushing pressure. Their enzymes function at temperatures that would denature conventional proteins. Their DNA repair mechanisms work over time to prevent damage from radiation and extreme chemical environments. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond Earth. If life can thrive in such extreme conditions beneath our planet's surface, it dramatically expands the possibilities for life existing in similar environments throughout the universe. Mars Europa. Enceladus and countless other worlds that seem hostile to life on their surfaces might harbor thriving underground biospheres similar to what we've found on Earth. The underground biosphere also represents a completely independent branch of life's evolutionary tree. These organisms have been evolving separately from surface life for potentially billions of years, developing along entirely different evolutionary pathways. Studying them is like discovering a parallel universe of biological innovation that has been operating according to its own rules, while surface life evolved in completely different directions. Research into these deep ecosystems has revealed biological processes that could revolutionize biotechnology and medicine. Organisms that can survive in such extreme conditions possess biochemical capabilities that could be adapted for everything from waste processing to pharmaceutical production. Their unique metabolic pathways might provide solutions to environmental problems or energy production challenges that surface-based biology could never address. The discovery also raises profound questions about the origin and distribution of life on Earth. If such extensive ecosystems can exist completely independently of surface conditions, it suggests that life might be far more robust and widespread than we ever imagined. These underground organisms might represent some of the earliest forms of life on Earth, preserving biological processes and evolutionary innovations from the planet's earliest history. Some researchers speculate that the underground biosphere might be connected to the origin of life itself. The chemical conditions in deep Earth environments might be similar to those that existed when life first emerged on our planet. Studying these modern underground ecosystems could provide insights into how life originally developed and what conditions are necessary for its emergence. The scale of this hidden biosphere is staggering. We're not talking about isolated pockets of unusual microbes. This is an interconnected network of life that extends through rock formations and underground water systems across vast distances. Some researchers believe these underground communities might be communicating or exchanging genetic material across continental distances through mechanisms we don't yet understand. The existence of such extensive underground life also has implications for our understanding of Earth's carbon cycle and global climate systems. These organisms process enormous quantities of carbon compounds, potentially playing a major role in regulating atmospheric chemistry and planetary temperature. Their activities might be influencing surface climate in ways we've never recognized. Perhaps most intriguingly, the discovery suggests that the boundary between living and non-living systems might be far more complex than we typically assume. Some of the chemical processes carried out by these deep organisms are so slow and subtle that they blur the line between biological activity and geological processes. They might represent a form of life that operates on such different timescales and energy levels that we're only beginning to learn how to recognize it. What if the underground biosphere is actually the dominant form of life on Earth, and surface life is just a thin, temporary layer of recent biological innovation? Could similar underground worlds exist on other planets, harboring forms of life that we would never detect by studying only surface conditions? The genetic disk of Colombia. In the mountains of Colombia, archaeologists have discovered an artifact so unusual and controversial that it challenges everything we think we know about the scientific knowledge possessed by ancient civilizations. The object appears to be a simple stone disc carved from lyddite, a type of marine sedimentary rock formed in deep ocean environments. But the images engraved on both sides of this 6,000-year-old artifact depict biological processes with a level of detail and accuracy that shouldn't have been possible until the development of modern microscopic technology. The disc itself is relatively small, easily held in two hands, but its implications are enormous. The engravings cover both surfaces with intricate detail, showing what appears to be a complete sequence of human embryonic development from conception through birth. But these aren't simplified artistic representations or symbolic depictions. The images show anatomical details that can only be observed with powerful microscopes. Cellular structures, developmental stages, and biological processes that weren't supposedly understood until the 20th century. The level of detail in these carvings is what makes the disc so controversial. The images appear to show fertilization at the cellular level, early embryonic cell division, the formation of major organ systems and developmental stages that match modern medical understanding of human reproduction with startling accuracy. Some of the engravings even seem to depict genetic structures and chromosomal arrangements that were completely unknown to science until the discovery of DNA. What makes this discovery even more puzzling is the origin of the material itself. Lyddite is a marine sedimentary stone that forms at great depths beneath the ocean over millions of years. The specific type of lyddite used for this disc would have been extremely difficult to obtain for ancient mountain-dwelling peoples, requiring either extensive trade networks or knowledge of geological formations that conventional archaeology doesn't attribute to pre-Columbian South American cultures. The precision of the carvings also presents technical challenges that are difficult to explain using known ancient technologies. The fine detail work, particularly the microscopic level biological structures, would have required tools and techniques far more sophisticated than what archaeologists typically associate with 6,000-year-old civilizations. Some of the engravings are so small and precise that they push the limits of what could be achieved even with modern hand tools. Supporters of the disc's authenticity argue that it provides evidence of advanced medical and biological knowledge among ancient South American peoples. According to this interpretation, pre-Columbian civilizations might have developed observational techniques and theoretical frameworks for understanding human reproduction that were far more sophisticated than mainstream archaeology recognizes. The disc could represent a teaching tool or medical manual used by ancient healers or shamans. Some researchers have proposed that the disc might be evidence of lost technological capabilities among ancient peoples. They suggest that pre-Columbian civilizations might have developed optical instruments or other technologies that allowed them to observe cellular-level biological processes. This would require a complete revision of our understanding of technological development in the ancient Americas. The most provocative interpretations suggest that the disc provides evidence of contact between ancient humans and technologically advanced civilizations, possibly extraterrestrial in origin. According to this theory, the detailed biological knowledge depicted on the disc could only have been obtained through interaction with beings who possessed scientific capabilities far beyond what ancient humans could have developed independently. However, the disc has also attracted significant skepticism from mainstream archaeologists and scientists. Critics point out several problems with claims about its authenticity and significance. The first issue is the lack of clear archaeological context. The disc appeared in collections without detailed documentation of where and how it was discovered, making it impossible to verify its age or cultural origin through standard archaeological methods. Skeptics also note that the interpretation of the engravings as depicting embryonic development might be the result of modern viewers imposing contemporary biological knowledge onto ambiguous ancient symbols. What proponents see as detailed cellular structures, critics argue could be decorative patterns or symbolic representations that have been misinterpreted through the lens of modern scientific understanding. Some experts have suggested that the disc might be a modern fabrication created to capitalize on interest in ancient mysteries and alternative archaeological theories. The combination of advanced scientific knowledge and ancient materials could be achieved by contemporary artisans using modern techniques to carve detailed images into genuinely old stone materials. The controversy surrounding the genetic disc highlights broader debates within archaeology about how to interpret ancient artifacts that seem to display knowledge or capabilities beyond what conventional historical timelines would suggest. These debates often center on questions about the intellectual capabilities of ancient peoples and the possibility that some civilizations achieved levels of understanding that were later lost. Independent analysis of the disc has been complicated by questions about access and preservation. Different researchers have reached conflicting conclusions about its age authenticity and significance, partly because comprehensive scientific analysis requires techniques that could potentially damage the artifact. This has limited the ability of the scientific community to reach consensus about what the disc actually represents. The genetic disc also raises important questions about the transmission of knowledge across ancient civilizations. If the engravings do represent advanced biological understanding, how was this knowledge developed, preserved, and transmitted? Were there educational institutions or scholarly traditions in ancient South America that were far more sophisticated than conventional archaeology recognizes? Perhaps most intriguingly, the disc forces us to consider the possibility that human understanding of biology and reproduction might have followed a very different historical trajectory than we typically assume. What if detailed knowledge of human development was understood by ancient peoples through observational techniques or theoretical frameworks that were later forgotten during cultural disruptions or technological regressions? Could there be other artifacts around the world that preserve evidence of advanced ancient knowledge waiting to be recognized and properly interpreted? What might these discoveries tell us about the true capabilities and achievements of our ancestors? The Neanderthal diet paradox. Recent breakthroughs in archaeological science have revealed something unexpected about our closest evolutionary relatives, the Neanderthals. For decades, scientists believed they understood the basic lifestyle and dietary patterns of these ancient humans who shared Europe with our own species for thousands of years. But new evidence from fossilized teeth and bone chemistry has uncovered a paradox that challenges everything we thought we knew about Neanderthal survival strategies and their ultimate extinction. The latest research involves analyzing isotope signatures and microscopic wear patterns in Neanderthal teeth discovered in caves across Spain and other parts of Europe. These techniques allow scientists to reconstruct diet and behavior with unprecedented precision, essentially reading the chemical history of what these ancient humans ate throughout their lives. What they found was completely unexpected. Evidence of dietary specialization so extreme that it might have contributed to their eventual disappearance. Chemical traces preserved in dental enamel reveal that Neanderthals maintained a diet focused almost exclusively on large game animals. We are not talking about a balanced omnivorous diet with a preference for meat. The isotope signatures show protein consumption levels that indicate these ancient humans were hypercarnivores, relying on animal sources for virtually all of their nutritional needs. Their diet centered on massive Ice Age megafauna mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, cave bears, and giant deer. The level of meat consumption indicated by the chemical evidence is extraordinary, even compared to modern Arctic peoples who live in environments where plant foods are scarce. Neanderthal protein intake appears to have been comparable to that of top predators like wolves or lions, suggesting a hunting-based lifestyle so specialized that it defined their entire cultural and biological adaptation to Ice Age Europe. Microscopic analysis of tooth surfaces provides additional evidence of this extreme dietary focus. Scratches and wear patterns on Neanderthal teeth show evidence of extensive food processing using stone tools, but the damage patterns are consistent with preparing meat and processing animal hides rather than grinding plant materials. The teeth also show evidence of being used as tools themselves, probably for softening leather or processing sinew and bone. Some Neanderthal teeth do show traces of plant consumption, but at levels so low they suggest plant foods were emergency supplements rather than regular dietary components. Even when plant materials were consumed, they appear to have been selected for medicinal properties rather than nutritional value, prehistoric pharmacy rather than cuisine. This hypercarnivorous lifestyle represents an incredibly successful adaptation to Ice Age conditions. Neanderthals developed sophisticated hunting technologies and social strategies that allowed them to take down animals many times their size. Their robust skeletal structure and powerful musculature were perfectly adapted for the physical demands of hunting megafauna in harsh glacial environments. However, this extreme specialization also created a critical vulnerability that modern research suggests contributed to their extinction. The end of the last ice age brought dramatic environmental changes that caused the extinction or migration of many large animals that formed the foundation of the Neanderthal diet. As mammoths, giant deer, and other megafauna disappeared from European landscapes, Neanderthals found themselves without their primary food sources. Meanwhile, modern Homo sapiens who entered Europe during this period displayed much more dietary flexibility. Chemical analysis of early modern human remains shows evidence of varied diets that included fish, small game plant foods, and marine resources. This dietary diversity provided crucial advantages during periods of environmental change, allowing modern humans to adapt to shifting resources, while Neanderthals remained locked into hunting strategies that were becoming increasingly obsolete. The contrast between Neanderthal dietary specialization and modern human adaptability might explain one of the greatest mysteries in human evolution: why our species survived while our close relatives disappeared. It wasn't necessarily that modern humans were more intelligent or technologically advanced, but that they maintained behavioral flexibility that allowed them to survive environmental disruptions that proved catastrophic for more specialized populations. Research into Neanderthal nutrition has also revealed surprising details about their social organization and technological capabilities. The ability to consistently hunt megafauna required sophisticated cooperation planning and tool technologies that were far more advanced than previously recognized. Neanderthals weren't primitive scavengers, they were apex predators operating at the top of Ice Age food webs. Some of the most intriguing evidence comes from Neanderthal sites that show evidence of systematic hunting strategies involving entire communities. Archaeological remains suggest coordinated drives that forced large animals into kill sites where entire herds could be processed at once. These operations required planning, communication, and social coordination that indicates complex cognitive abilities. The dietary evidence also provides insights into Neanderthal physiology and metabolism. Their extreme protein consumption would have required metabolic adaptations that allowed them to process large quantities of meat without developing the health problems that would affect modern humans on similar diets. They essentially evolved into human equivalents of large carnivores. Recent discoveries have even found evidence of Neanderthals modifying their environment to support their hunting lifestyle. Some sites show evidence of landscape burning designed to create favorable hunting conditions, suggesting they were actively managing entire ecosystems to support their specialized dietary needs. The Neanderthal diet paradox highlights the complex relationship between evolutionary success and ultimate survival. Their hypercarnivorous adaptation was incredibly successful for hundreds of thousands of years, allowing them to thrive in Ice Age Europe longer than any other human species. But the same specialization that made them successful also made them vulnerable to environmental changes that more flexible populations could survive. This research has implications that extend far beyond understanding extinct human species. It provides insights into the relationship between dietary specialization and evolutionary resilience that are relevant to modern conservation biology. and our understanding of how species respond to environmental change. What lessons might the Neanderthal extinction hold for modern human survival in an era of rapid environmental change? Could our own technological and cultural specializations create vulnerabilities similar to those that ultimately doomed our closest relatives? Biological and evolutionary enigmas. The biological mysteries we've explored reveal a common theme that should fundamentally alter how we think about life on Earth and the trajectory of evolutionary development. Each discovery, from the vast underground biosphere to the controversial genetic disk to the Neanderthal dietary paradox, challenges our assumptions about the limits of biological possibility and the scope of evolutionary innovation. What emerges from these mysteries is a picture of life that is far more diverse, resilient, and historically complex than our standard models typically acknowledge. The underground biosphere shows us that life can thrive in conditions we thought were impossible following evolutionary pathways completely independent of surface biology. The genetic disk suggests that human understanding of biological processes might have a far more complex history than linear technological progress would suggest. The Neanderthal evidence demonstrates that evolutionary success and long-term survival can be completely disconnected with the most successful adaptations potentially becoming sources of ultimate vulnerability. These discoveries hint at a biological reality where the boundaries between possible and impossible are constantly shifting, where life finds ways to exist in every conceivable environment, and where intelligence and knowledge can develop along pathways that don't conform to our conventional understanding of progress and development. They also suggest that Earth's biological history includes chapters we've never recognized, underground ecosystems that have been operating for billions of years, ancient knowledge traditions that achieved insights we're only now rediscovering, and evolutionary experiments that produced forms of intelligence and adaptation that followed completely different rules from what we consider normal. Archaeological and historical mysteries. The lost city of Ciudad Perdida. Hidden deep within the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta mountains of northern Colombia lies one of South America's most extraordinary archaeological discoveries. A massive stone city that predates Machu Picchu by over 650 years and challenges everything we thought we knew about pre-Columbian urban development. Ciudad Perdida, or the Lost City, represents an entirely independent tradition of city planning and engineering that developed in complete isolation from other known ancient civilizations. The city was built by the Tairona civilization sometime around the 8th century CE, emerging from the mountain forests as a sophisticated urban center that would eventually house thousands of inhabitants across 169 stone terraces carved directly into the mountainside. The scale and complexity of this achievement becomes apparent only when you consider the extreme geographical challenges the builders faced. Constructing a major city on steep mountain slopes covered in dense jungle, using only stone tools and human labor. What makes Ciudad Perdida particularly remarkable is not just its age, but the sophistication of its urban planning and engineering. The entire city is built around a complex system of stone terraces that follow the natural contours of the mountain while creating level platforms for buildings, plazas, and agricultural areas. These terraces are connected by an intricate network of stone staircases and pathways that allowed movement throughout the vertical city. The engineering required to create this mountain metropolis was extraordinary by any measure. The builders had to solve problems of drainage erosion control and structural stability on steep slopes that would challenge modern engineers. They developed innovative techniques for building retaining walls that could support tons of earth and stone while allowing water to drain properly during the region's intense rainy seasons. Archaeological investigation has revealed that Ciudad Perdida was far more than just a collection of buildings on terraces. The city featured sophisticated water management systems with stone channels and aqueducts that brought fresh water from mountain streams to every part of the urban area. Circular plazas served as gathering spaces for community activities and ceremonies. Residential areas were organized into neighborhoods that suggest complex social organization and planning. The Tairona people who built this city developed architectural techniques that were perfectly adapted to their mountain environment. Buildings were constructed with stone foundations and walls that could withstand earthquakes and landslides. Roofs were designed to shed the heavy rains that fall in this region. Storage areas were built to keep food and materials dry during the extended wet season. Perhaps most impressively, the city was designed as an integrated system that worked with the natural environment rather than imposing artificial structures upon it. The terraces followed natural drainage patterns. The buildings were oriented to take advantage of prevailing winds and sunlight, and the overall layout respected the mountain's ecological systems, while providing space for a large urban population. Archaeological evidence suggests that Ciudad Perdida was not just a single city, but the center of a much larger urban network that included smaller settlements and agricultural terraces spread throughout the surrounding mountains. This represents a level of regional planning and coordination that indicates the Tairona civilization was far more sophisticated than early colonial accounts suggested. The city's inhabitants left behind a rich material culture that provides insights into their daily lives and social organization. Elaborate goldwork demonstrates advanced metallurgical techniques and artistic traditions. Ceramic vessels show evidence of trade networks that extended across northern South America. Stone tools and weapons indicate technological innovations adapted to both mountain environments and conflicts with neighboring groups. The Tairona civilization that created Ciudad Perdida maintained their mountain city for over 700 years before it was abandoned during the Spanish colonial period. Unlike many pre-Columbian civilizations that collapsed before European contact, the Tairona people encountered Spanish conquistadors and colonial administrators who imposed new political and religious systems that disrupted traditional ways of life. The abandonment of Ciudad Perdida wasn't sudden or catastrophic. Archaeological evidence suggests a gradual process as the Tairona people retreated deeper into the mountains to escape colonial control. Many aspects of their culture survived among indigenous communities that continue to live in the Sierra Nevada today, maintaining traditional knowledge and practices that connect them to the city builders. Modern archaeological investigation of Ciudad Perdida has been complicated by the site's remote location and the political situation in Colombia. The city is located in an area that has been affected by armed conflict and drug trafficking, making scientific research dangerous and difficult. Most of the archaeological work has been conducted in partnership with indigenous communities who consider the site sacred and maintain traditional knowledge about its history. The discovery and study of Ciudad Perdida has important implications for our understanding of pre-Columbian South American civilizations. It demonstrates that sophisticated urban development occurred independently in multiple regions of the Americas, with each civilization developing unique solutions to environmental and social challenges. The city also challenges conventional narratives about indigenous South American societies. Rather than simple agricultural villages, the Tirona created complex urban centers with advanced engineering, sophisticated social organization, and extensive trade networks. Their achievements rival those of better-known civilizations like the Inca, despite developing in complete independence from Andean cultural traditions. Modern preservation efforts face the challenge of protecting Ciudad Perdida while respecting the rights and traditions of indigenous communities who consider it part of their ancestral heritage. The site has been designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Candidate, but conservation work must be conducted in partnership with local communities who maintain spiritual connections to the ancient city. Climate change poses new threats to Ciudad Perdida as changing rainfall patterns and increased storm intensity threaten the stone terraces and drainage systems that have preserved the city for over a millennium. Conservation efforts now include monitoring environmental changes and developing strategies to protect the site from accelerating natural deterioration. What other lost cities might be hidden in the mountains and jungles of South America, waiting for archaeological investigation to reveal the true scope and sophistication of pre-Columbian civilizations? How many urban traditions and engineering innovations were lost during the colonial period, taking with them knowledge that might be valuable for modern sustainable development? The Man in the Iron Mask. Among the great mysteries of European history, few have captured the imagination quite like the figure known as the Man in the Iron Mask. A prisoner whose identity was so dangerous to the French monarchy that he was forced to wear a mask for over 3 decades of captivity, taking his secrets to the grave in one of history's most elaborate cover-ups. Official records from the reign of Louis XIV document the existence of this mysterious prisoner from 1669 until his death in 1703. But they reveal virtually nothing about his identity or the reasons for his imprisonment. What makes this case extraordinary isn't just the length of his captivity, but the extraordinary measures taken to conceal his identity and prevent any communication with the outside world. The prisoner was moved between various fortresses and prisons across France under heavy guard and strict protocols that ensured no one could learn who he was. Prison officials received explicit orders that the prisoner was never to be seen without his mask, never to be allowed contact with anyone outside his carefully controlled environment, and never to be permitted to reveal anything about his identity or background. Contemporary accounts describe the mask as initially being made of black velvet, later replaced by what witnesses called an iron mask, though historical analysis suggests it was more likely made of velvet-covered metal or reinforced cloth. Regardless of the exact materials, the mask served a single purpose: to ensure that no one could identify the prisoner or recognize his face. The level of secrecy surrounding this case was unprecedented in French prison history. Prison guards were selected for their loyalty and discretion. The prisoner's cell was specially prepared to prevent communication with other inmates. Even his meals were served under conditions that prevented kitchen staff from seeing his face or hearing his voice clearly enough to make identification possible. What makes the case even more intriguing is evidence that despite his imprisonment, the mysterious prisoner was treated with unusual respect and consideration. Historical records suggest he was provided with comfortable accommodations, quality food, books, and other amenities not typically available to ordinary prisoners. This preferential treatment indicates that his identity or background commanded respect even from his captors. Several theories have emerged over the centuries attempting to explain the prisoner's identity and the reasons for such elaborate secrecy. The most persistent suggestion is that he was somehow connected to the royal family, possibly an illegitimate brother of Louis XIV, a deposed political rival, or someone whose existence threatened the legitimacy of the monarchy. Some historians have proposed that the prisoner might have been Eustache Dauger, a valet who became involved in court intrigues and learned secrets that made him too dangerous to release but too valuable to execute. According to this theory, his knowledge of royal scandals or political conspiracies made him a permanent security risk who had to be isolated from society. Alternative theories suggest the prisoner might have been a high-ranking political figure who fell from favor, a foreign dignitary whose capture had to be kept secret for diplomatic reasons, or a religious leader whose imprisonment would have caused public unrest if revealed. Each theory attempts to explain why someone would be considered so dangerous that their very identity had to be hidden. Modern historical analysis has attempted to solve the mystery by examining prison records, correspondence between officials, and contemporary accounts from people who might have had contact with the case. However, the deliberate destruction or concealment of relevant documents has made definitive identification extremely difficult. What's particularly striking about this case is how successfully the French monarchy managed to maintain secrecy for over 3 decades. In an era before modern security techniques, keeping such a secret required extraordinary coordination and discipline among everyone involved in the prisoner's confinement. The fact that the mystery persists suggests that the cover-up was remarkably effective. The case of the man in the iron mask illustrates the absolute power wielded by European monarchies in the 17th century and their ability to make people disappear from history when necessary. It represents a level of state control over individual identity that demonstrates how completely royal authority could erase someone from public existence. The mystery has had a lasting impact on a popular culture, inspiring countless books, films, and theories about the prisoner's true identity. However, these fictional accounts often obscure the historical reality of what this case represents. Evidence of political power exercised with such thoroughness that it could hide a person's very existence for decades. Recent historical research has focused on examining the broader context of political imprisonment during Louis XIV's reign, looking for patterns that might explain why this particular case required such extreme secrecy. Some scholars suggest that the prisoner's identity might have been less important than what his case represented, a demonstration of royal power and a warning to others about the consequences of crossing the monarchy. The archives of the Bastille and other French prisons from this period contain records of numerous political prisoners whose identities were concealed or whose cases were handled with unusual secrecy. The man in the iron mask might have been exceptional only in the duration and thoroughness of his concealment rather than in the fact of his mysterious imprisonment. Archaeological investigation of sites where the prisoner was held has attempted to find physical evidence that might provide clues about his identity or treatment. However, the extensive renovations and destructions that many of these historical buildings have undergone over the centuries have eliminated most traces of their 17th century occupants. The case also raises broader questions about historical memory and the ways that political power can shape what information survives for future generations. How many other individuals were erased from history through similar means? What other state secrets from the era of absolute monarchy remain hidden because the cover-ups were too successful? Could modern historical and forensic techniques eventually solve this centuries-old mystery? Or has too much evidence been deliberately destroyed to ever know the truth about the man in the iron mask, the Pharaoh's curse? When archaeologist Howard Carter peered through a small hole into the tomb of Tutankhamun on November 26, 1922, and whispered that he could see wonderful things, he was about to unleash one of the most famous mysteries in modern archaeology. Within months, members of his expedition team began dying under circumstances that newspapers around the world would sensationally attribute to an ancient Egyptian curse, creating a legend that continues to influence popular perceptions of archaeology and ancient Egypt. The story of the Pharaoh's curse began with the discovery itself. The most intact royal tomb ever found in Egypt's Valley of the Kings. After years of searching, Carter and his patron, Lord Carnarvon, had finally located the burial chamber of the boy king who ruled Egypt over 3,000 years ago. The tomb contained treasures beyond imagination, golden masks, jewelry, furniture, weapons, and religious artifacts that provided an unprecedented glimpse into ancient Egyptian royal life. But within months of the tomb's opening, Lord Carnarvon died suddenly in Cairo from what appeared to be complications from an infected mosquito bite. His death occurred just as international media attention on the discovery was reaching its peak, and newspapers immediately began speculating about supernatural causes. The timing seemed too coincidental. The financial backer of the expedition had died shortly after disturbing the pharaoh's eternal rest. What transformed this single death into a legendary curse was the series of additional deaths and misfortunes that followed. Over the next several years, numerous people connected to the Tutankhamun expedition died under various circumstances. Some deaths appeared to be natural causes, heart attacks, strokes, diseases. But their timing and the ages of some victims led many to believe that supernatural forces were at work. Contemporary newspapers, particularly in Britain and America, sensationalized these deaths with headlines about ancient curses and pharaonic revenge. The story captured public imagination during an era when interest in archaeology and ancient mysteries was at its height. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb coincided with a broader cultural fascination with Egypt and the supernatural that made curse stories particularly appealing to readers. The supposed curse gained additional credibility from the discovery of inscriptions in Egyptian tombs that warned of dire consequences for anyone who disturbed the dead. While such warnings were common in ancient Egyptian burial practices and served practical purposes in deterring tomb robbers, they provided seemingly authentic ancient sources for the curse narrative. Modern scientific analysis of the deaths associated with the Tutankhamun expedition reveals a much more mundane reality. Epidemiological studies have shown that the mortality rate among expedition members was actually no higher than would be expected for people of their ages and circumstances during that historical period. Most deaths can be attributed to natural causes, accidents or diseases that were common in early 20th century Egypt. Lord Carnarvon's death, which initiated the curse legend, was almost certainly caused by blood poisoning from an infected insect bite, combined with complications from his generally poor health. He had suffered from respiratory problems for years and was in a weakened condition when he traveled to Egypt. The medical treatment available in 1920s Cairo was limited, and deaths from infections that would be easily treatable today were unfortunately common. Several supposed curse victims actually lived for many years after the tomb's discovery, eventually dying of old age or unrelated causes decades later. Howard Carter himself, who spent more time in the tomb than anyone else, and would presumably have been the primary target of any supernatural revenge, lived until 1939 and died of natural causes at age 64. Scientific investigation has also revealed rational explanations for some of the health problems experienced by people working in ancient Egyptian tombs. Sealed burial chambers can contain harmful bacteria, fungal spores, and other biological agents that accumulate over thousands of years. Exposure to these organisms can cause respiratory problems and other health issues, particularly in people with compromised immune systems. The legend of the Pharaoh's curse also reflects broader cultural anxieties about Western exploration and exploitation of non-Western cultures during the colonial period. The idea that ancient Egyptian magic could reach across thousands of years to punish European archaeologists served as a form of symbolic justice for the removal of artifacts from their cultural context. However, the curse narrative has had lasting negative effects on public understanding of archaeology and ancient Egyptian culture. It has contributed to sensationalized portrayals of ancient Egypt that emphasize supernatural elements over the remarkable real achievements of Egyptian civilization. The focus on curses and magic has often overshadowed the genuine historical and cultural significance of discoveries like Tutankhamun's tomb. Modern Egyptology has worked to counter curse mythology by emphasizing the scientific value of archaeological discoveries and the respect that contemporary archaeologists have for ancient cultures and burial practices. Current archaeological work in Egypt operates under strict protocols designed to preserve cultural heritage and involve Egyptian scholars and institutions as full partners in research. The tomb of Tutankhamun itself continues to be studied using advanced techniques that reveal new information about the young pharaoh's life, death, and the political circumstances of his reign. Recent research has focused on questions about his parentage, the cause of his death, and the political situation that led to his burial in a relatively modest tomb compared to other pharaohs. The curse legend has also contributed to important discussions about the ethics of archaeology and the treatment of human remains and cultural artifacts. Modern archaeological practice increasingly emphasizes collaboration with descendant communities and the respectful treatment of ancient burials, principles that might have prevented some of the cultural insensitivity that contributed to curse narratives. What does the persistence of the Pharaoh's curse legend tell us about the human need to find supernatural explanations for coincidental events? How might modern archaeological discoveries be better communicated to avoid similar mythologization while still capturing public interest in ancient cultures, archaeological, and historical mysteries. The archaeological and historical mysteries we've explored share a common thread that should make us reconsider how we understand the relationship between past and present. Whether we're examining the sophisticated urban planning of Ciudad Perdida, the political intrigue surrounding the man in the iron mask, or the cultural mythology that emerged from Tutankhamun's discovery, each case reveals how much complexity and nuance is often lost when historical events become simplified into popular narratives. These mysteries demonstrate that the past was far more sophisticated, politically complex, and culturally rich than our standard historical frameworks typically acknowledge. Ciudad Perdida shows us that pre-Columbian civilizations achieved levels of urban planning and engineering that rival modern capabilities. The Man in the Iron Mask reveals the sophisticated mechanisms of state power and control that existed centuries before modern surveillance technologies. The Pharaoh's Curse illustrates how quickly historical facts can be transformed into cultural mythology when they intersect with contemporary anxieties and fascinations. What emerges from these cases is a picture of human history that is simultaneously more impressive and more mysterious than we often recognize. Each discovery opens new questions about the capabilities of past civilizations, the complexity of historical events, and the ways that cultural narratives can either illuminate or obscure historical reality. These mysteries also highlight the ongoing challenges faced by historians and archaeologists in separating documented facts from cultural interpretations, in understanding past events within their proper contexts rather than through the lens of contemporary assumptions, and in communicating the genuine significance of historical discoveries without falling into sensationalism or mythologization. Legends rooted in reality, Beauty and the Beast. The Real Petrus Gonzalez. The fairy tale of Beauty and the Beast, beloved by generations as a story of love, transcending physical appearance, has origins far more extraordinary than most people realize. This isn't just another case of folklore emerging from collective imagination. It's based on the documented life of a real person whose existence in Renaissance Europe was so remarkable that it inspired one of the world's most enduring romantic legends. The true story begins in 1537 on the Canary island of Tenerife with the birth of Petrus Gonzalez, a man who would become one of the most famous individuals in 16th century European courts due to a rare genetic condition called hypertrichosis. This condition caused excessive hair growth over his entire body, giving him an appearance that his contemporaries described as beast-like or wild. Yet his life story would prove to be one of the most touching tales of acceptance and love in recorded history. Hypertrichosis is an extremely rare genetic disorder that affects perhaps 1 in a billion people. The condition causes hair to grow continuously and excessively over the entire body, including areas where humans normally have little or no hair. In Petrus's case, the condition was so pronounced that thick, dark hair covered his face, arms, and torso, creating an appearance that was so unusual that people of his era considered him a marvel of nature. At the age of 10, Petrus was brought to France as a gift for King Henry II, a practice that was unfortunately common during an era when people with unusual physical characteristics were often treated as curiosities for royal entertainment. However, Petrus's story takes a remarkable turn that distinguishes it from the typical exploitation of people with differences during this historical period. Rather than being treated merely as a court oddity, Petrus received a comprehensive education that was typically reserved for nobility. He was taught to read and write in multiple languages, studied philosophy and literature, learned court etiquette and social graces, and was essentially raised as a member of the royal household. This education transformed him from a curiosity into a cultured gentleman who could engage in sophisticated conversations with the most educated people of his time. After King Henry II's death in 1559, Petrus continued to live under the patronage of Queen Catherine de' Medici, who not only maintained his position at court, but arranged one of the most extraordinary marriages in European history. Catherine negotiated a marriage between Petrus and Catherine Raffaling, a lady of the court who came from a noble family and was considered beautiful by the standards of her time. What makes this marriage particularly remarkable is that it appears to have been a genuine love match rather than merely a political arrangement. Historical records suggest that Catherine Raffaling was not coerced into the marriage, but chose to marry Petrus despite his unusual appearance. Contemporary accounts describe their relationship as genuinely affectionate and harmonious, challenging the social prejudices of their era. The couple had 7 children together, 4 of whom inherited their father's condition. Rather than being hidden away or treated as shameful secrets, these children were raised as members of noble society and received educations appropriate to their social status. The family lived openly at court, where they were respected members of the royal household rather than mere curiosity. The story of Petrus and his family quickly spread throughout the royal courts of Europe, inspiring numerous artistic works, written accounts, and eventually contributing to the folklore that would evolve into the Beauty and the Beast legend. Renaissance artists created portraits of the family that survive today, providing visual documentation of their lives and social positions. From a medical perspective, the Gonzalez family became subjects of scientific interests that contributed to early understanding of genetic inheritance. The fact that some children inherited the condition while others did not provided evidence for hereditary transmission of physical traits that wouldn't be fully understood until the development of modern genetics centuries later. The social implications of the Gonzalez family's acceptance into European nobility were profound for their historical period. Their story challenged prevailing attitudes about physical difference, beauty, and social worth during an era when such prejudices were deeply entrenched in cultural and religious beliefs. The family's success demonstrated that intellectual and social qualities could transcend physical appearance in ways that were unusual for their time. Renaissance European society was generally harsh toward people with physical differences, often interpreting unusual conditions as signs of divine displeasure or supernatural influence. The fact that the Gonzalez family not only survived but thrived in this environment speaks to their individual qualities and the progressive attitudes of their royal patrons. The transformation of their real story into the Beauty and the Beast legend illustrates how historical events can evolve into folklore that captures essential human truths while losing specific historical details. The core themes of the fairy tale: love transcending physical appearance, the importance of inner character over external beauty, and the possibility of social acceptance despite differences, all reflect the actual experiences of the Gonzalez family. Modern research into the Gonzalez family has been facilitated by the survival of court records, artistic portraits, and genealogical documents that provide detailed information about their lives. This documentation is unusual for people with disabilities in the Renaissance period, whose stories were rarely recorded with such detail and respect. Genetic analysis of contemporary families with hypertrichosis has confirmed that the condition is indeed hereditary and helped scientists understand the specific genetic mutations involved. This research has also revealed that hypertrichosis occurs in several different forms, with the type affecting the Gonzalez family being particularly rare and distinctive. The artistic legacy of the Gonzalez family includes portraits by some of the most skilled painters of their era, creating a visual record of their lives that provides insights into both Renaissance artistic techniques and social attitudes toward physical difference. These paintings show the family dressed in fine clothing and posed with dignity, emphasizing their social status rather than treating them as medical curiosities. Contemporary medical treatment of hypertrichosis has advanced considerably since the Renaissance, though the condition remains extremely rare and challenging to manage. Modern families affected by similar conditions often face social challenges that echo those confronted by the Gonzalez family centuries ago, making their story relevant to ongoing discussions about disability acceptance and social inclusion. The enduring popularity of the Beauty and the Beast story suggests that the themes embodied by Petrus Gonzalez and his family continue to resonate with audiences across cultures and centuries. Their real-life demonstration that love and acceptance can transcend physical differences provides a foundation for the fairy tale that makes it more than just fantasy. What does the transformation of the Gonzalez family's true story into a beloved fairy tale tell us about how society processes and preserves stories of triumph over prejudice and difference? Face-down burials and vampire prevention throughout medieval and early modern Europe, a fascinating and disturbing burial practice, reveals the depth of supernatural beliefs that shaped how our ancestors understood death, disease, and the afterlife. Archaeological excavations across Switzerland and other parts of Europe have uncovered hundreds of graves where the deceased were deliberately buried face down, often with additional measures taken to prevent what communities believed would be their return from the dead as vampires or other supernatural threats. These unusual burials weren't random anomalies or the result of careless grave digging. They represent a systematic response to cultural fears about revenants, vampires, and other forms of undead beings that European communities believed could rise from their graves to terrorize the living. The practices associated with these burials reveal a worldview where the boundary between life and death was seen as dangerously permeable. Archaeological evidence shows that face-down burials occurred throughout Europe, but were particularly common during periods of epidemic disease, social upheaval, and economic hardship. The Black Death and other plague outbreaks triggered especially intense waves of these unusual burial practices, as communities struggled to understand why death was striking so suddenly and extensively. The face-down positioning was just one element of elaborate burial rituals designed to prevent the dead from returning. Many graves show evidence of additional restraints, bodies bound with ropes, hands tied behind backs, feet shackled together, or heavy stones placed on top of the corpse. Some burials include evidence of more extreme measures such as decapitation stakes driven through the chest or other forms of post-mortem mutilation. These practices weren't performed on random individuals. They followed specific cultural logic about who was most likely to return from the dead. People who died during epidemics, those suspected of witchcraft or other supernatural associations, individuals who died violently or under suspicious circumstances, and those who have been marginalized in life were most likely to receive these special burial treatments. The belief systems underlying these practices were complex and varied between different regions and time periods. In some communities, face-down burial was thought to confuse the deceased, making it impossible for them to find their way back to the surface. Other traditions held that burying someone face down would cause them to dig deeper into the earth if they tried to claw their way out rather than toward the surface. Heavy stones placed on graves served multiple purposes in this belief system. They physically prevented the dead from pushing up through the soil, but they also had symbolic significance as barriers between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Some communities believed that the weight of stones would pin down restless spirits and prevent them from escaping their graves. The practice of restraining corpses with ropes or chains reflected beliefs about the physical capabilities of the undead. European folklore described vampires and revenants as possessing supernatural strength that allowed them to break free from normal burial constraints. Elaborate binding techniques were developed to counter these supposed abilities. Archaeological analysis has revealed regional variations in these burial practices that reflect different cultural traditions and beliefs about the supernatural. Some areas favored decapitation as the most reliable method of preventing return from the dead. Others relied on piercing the heart with wooden or iron stakes. Still others used combinations of multiple techniques, suggesting either particularly strong fears or uncertainty about which methods were most effective. The timing of these unusual burials provides insights into the social and psychological factors that triggered supernatural fears. Many face-down burials cluster around periods of crisis, epidemic disease, military conflicts, crop failures, or other disasters that disrupted normal social order. When communities couldn't understand or control the forces affecting their lives, supernatural explanations and protective measures became more common. Modern analysis of skeletal remains from these burials has revealed information about the health and social status of people who received these treatments. Many show evidence of diseases, malnutrition, or physical disabilities that might have made them seem different or threatening to their communities. Others appear to have been perfectly healthy individuals who were suspected of supernatural associations for reasons that aren't clear from the archaeological record. The preservation of these burial practices in archaeological sites has been remarkable, allowing researchers to study the specific techniques used in the social contexts in which they occurred. Soil conditions, burial methods, and the durability of restraining materials have combined to create detailed records of practices that were once widespread but are now largely forgotten. Contemporary accounts from medieval and early modern Europe provide written documentation that complements the archaeological evidence. Church records, legal documents, and personal correspondence describe community decisions to use special burial practices, often in response to specific supernatural incidents or fears about particular individuals. The relationship between these burial practices and official religious doctrine was complex and often contradictory. While the Catholic Church generally opposed beliefs in vampires and revenants, as superstitious local clergy often participated in or sanctioned protective burial practices when community fears became intense enough to threaten social order. Medical historians have identified connections between epidemic disease and vampire beliefs that help explain the timing and distribution of unusual burial practices. Symptoms of certain diseases, decomposition processes in mass graves, and the limited medical understanding of disease transmission all contributed to supernatural explanations for illness and death. The decline of these burial practices coincided with changes in medical knowledge, religious authority, and social organization that reduced community fears about the supernatural. However, archaeological evidence suggests that some communities continued using protective burial techniques well into the early modern period, demonstrating the persistence of traditional beliefs even as official culture changed. Modern vampire folklore and popular culture have romanticized and transformed historical beliefs about the undead, often losing the genuine terror and social disruption that these beliefs caused in historical communities. The archaeological evidence of face-down burials and protective measures provides a more realistic picture of how supernatural fears actually affected people's lives. These burial practices also reveal information about community decision-making processes and social authority in historical Europe. The choice to bury someone face down or with restraints typically involved collective decisions by community leaders, religious authorities, and family members, showing how supernatural beliefs were integrated into formal social institutions. What do these elaborate burial practices tell us about the psychological and social functions of supernatural beliefs during times of crisis? How might understanding historical responses to unexplained mortality help us better comprehend contemporary reactions to disease outbreaks and social disruption? The Christman murder legend. In the dark forests of 16th century Germany, a figure emerged whose crimes were so horrific and whose methods so brutal that his story became the stuff of legend. Yet the line between historical fact and folkloric embellishment in the case of the murderer Christman remains one of the most puzzling mysteries in European criminal history. Was Christman a real serial killer whose crimes were accurately documented, or was he a mythical figure created to embody collective fears about the dangers lurking in medieval forests? The primary source for Christman's story comes from a book published in 1581 that claims to document his criminal career spanning over a decade, during which he allegedly murdered nearly 1,000 victims. According to this account, Christman operated throughout the German territories, hiding in forest caves and emerging to attack travelers, merchants, and anyone unfortunate enough to cross his path, while alone in the wilderness. The book describes Christman's methods in disturbing detail, portraying him as a methodical killer who kept detailed records of his victims and their possessions. This alleged record-keeping is one of the most unusual aspects of the legend. The idea that a medieval criminal would maintain written documentation of murders was unprecedented in actual criminal history, and suggests either an extraordinary individual or fictional embellishment. According to the documented accounts, Christman didn't kill randomly, but followed patterns that suggest careful planning and premeditation. He supposedly studied travel routes, identified vulnerable targets, and chose attack locations that provided maximum advantage while minimizing his risk of capture. This level of criminal sophistication would be remarkable for any historical period, but particularly unusual for medieval Europe. The scale of Chrisman's alleged crimes, nearly 1,000 murders over roughly a decade, represents a level of criminal activity that would have been extraordinarily difficult to achieve and conceal during the 16th century. For comparison, even modern serial killers with access to rapid transportation and anonymous urban environments rarely achieve victim counts approaching these numbers. Modern researchers examining the Chrisman legend have found several elements that cast doubt on its historical accuracy. The absence of corroborating evidence from court records, church documents, or contemporary chronicles is particularly striking given the alleged scale of his crimes. Criminal activities of this magnitude should have left extensive documentary traces in the detailed record-keeping systems of 16th-century German territories. The literary style and narrative structure of the 1581 book also suggest that it might be more folklore than historical documentation. The story follows patterns common in moral tales and cautionary literature of the period, emphasizing themes about the dangers of evil and the ultimate triumph of justice that were standard elements in contemporary religious and educational texts. Some historians have suggested that the Chrisman legend might represent a composite figure created from multiple actual criminal cases, folk tales about forest bandits, and cultural anxieties about the dangers of wilderness travel. Medieval and early modern Europe had legitimate concerns about highway robbery, brigandage, and violent crime in remote areas, making Chrisman a plausible embodiment of these real threats. The geographic and temporal scope of Chrisman's alleged activities also raises questions about the story's authenticity. The ability to operate across multiple German territories for over a decade would have required avoiding numerous local law enforcement systems, each with their own procedures for investigating and prosecuting serious crimes. The coordination required to track such a criminal across jurisdictional boundaries didn't exist in 16th century Germany. Alternative interpretations suggest that Chrisman might have been a real individual whose actual crimes were far less extensive than the legend claims. Local bandits or violent criminals often became the subjects of exaggerated tales that grew with each retelling, transforming ordinary criminals into legendary figures whose exploits bore little resemblance to historical reality. The psychological and social functions of the Chrisman legend provide insights into medieval attitudes toward crime, justice, and social order. Stories about extreme criminals served as cautionary tales that reinforced social norms and warned about the consequences of abandoning civilized behavior. They also provided explanations for unsolved crimes and mysterious disappearances that communities couldn't otherwise understand. The persistence of the Chrisman legend throughout German folklore demonstrates how criminal stories can evolve into cultural myths that serve purposes beyond simple historical documentation. The figure of Chrisman became a symbol for discussing themes of evil justice and the thin line between civilization and barbarism that resonated across generations. Research into other European criminal legends from the same period reveals similar patterns of historical criminals becoming folkloric figures whose legendary exploits far exceeded their documented crimes. This suggests that the transformation of real events into exaggerated legends was a common process in pre-modern European culture. The lack of physical evidence associated with Chrisman's alleged crimes is also significant. Archaeological investigation of sites mentioned in the legend has failed to produce evidence of the extensive criminal activity described in historical accounts. This absence of material evidence is particularly striking given the alleged scale and duration of his activities. Modern criminal psychology provides additional perspectives on the Chrisman legend. The behavioral patterns attributed to him combine elements that are both consistent with and contradictory to what we understand about serial criminal behavior. While some aspects of his alleged methods match patterns seen in documented cases, others seem to reflect fictional embellishments rather than realistic criminal behavior. The social context of 16th century Germany also influenced how criminal stories were told and preserved. Political fragmentation, religious conflicts, and social upheaval created conditions where sensational tales about extreme criminals could serve as metaphors for broader anxieties about social order and moral decay. Whether Chrisman was a real criminal whose story was embellished over time or a purely fictional figure created to embody cultural fears, his legend reveals important information about how medieval and early modern European societies understood and processed experiences of violence, crime, and social disruption. What does the persistence of criminal legends like Chrisman tell us about the social and psychological functions of extreme narratives in helping communities process fears about violence and social disorder? Legends rooted in reality. The legends we've explored in this final group reveal perhaps the most intriguing aspect of all the mysteries we've encountered: the complex relationship between documented historical facts and the cultural narratives that emerge from them. Each case demonstrates how real events and real people can be transformed through cultural memory into stories that serve purposes far beyond simple historical documentation. Petrus Gonzalez shows us how an individual's triumph over prejudice and social barriers can evolve into a universal story about love transcending physical differences. The face-down burial practices reveal how genuine fears and cultural beliefs create systematic responses that seem bizarre to modern eyes, but made perfect sense within their historical context. The Chrisman legend illustrates how the boundary between historical fact and cultural mythology can become so blurred that separating truth from fiction becomes nearly impossible. What emerges from these stories is an understanding that legends often preserve essential truths about human experience, even when the specific historical details have been transformed or embellished. The power of these narratives lies not in their factual accuracy, but in their ability to embody and transmit cultural values, social anxieties, and universal human experiences across generations. These legends also demonstrate how historical realities can be both more extraordinary and more mundane than the stories that grow from them. Petrus Gonzalez's actual life was remarkable enough without fictional embellishment, yet the fairy tale version captures emotional truths that resonate across cultures and centuries. The burial practices were responses to genuine community fears, yet they seem almost mythical to contemporary observers. Chrisman may or may not have existed as described, but his legend serves important cultural functions regardless of its historical accuracy. As we step back and examine all these mysteries together, patterns emerge that suggest deeper connections between seemingly unrelated phenomena. The underground biosphere and the metallic mass beneath the moon both challenge our assumptions about where life and organized matter can exist. The angel hair phenomenon and the non-human handprints both provide physical evidence of intelligence or organization that doesn't fit our conventional categories. The hidden chambers in the Great Pyramid and the sophisticated engineering of Ciudad Perdida both demonstrate that ancient civilizations possessed capabilities that exceed what our historical timelines typically acknowledge. The genetic disk and the Neanderthal dietary evidence both suggest that our understanding of human knowledge and evolutionary development might be far more complex than linear progress models would suggest. Perhaps most significantly, nearly every mystery we've explored shares a common characteristic. They exist at the boundaries of our current knowledge frameworks, in the spaces where our conventional understanding breaks down and something entirely new might be waiting to be discovered. These mysteries also reveal how often our scientific and historical models create artificial boundaries that might prevent us from seeing larger patterns. The separation between biology and geology breaks down when studying the underground biosphere. The distinction between historical fact and cultural mythology becomes meaningless when examining legends rooted in reality. The boundaries between possible and impossible shift constantly as our detection capabilities and analytical techniques become more sophisticated. The expanding frontier of the unknown. As we reach the end of our journey through these extraordinary mysteries, we find ourselves confronting a profound realization. The world we inhabit is far stranger, more complex, and more wonderful than any of our scientific models or historical narratives typically acknowledge. Each mystery we've explored represents not just an isolated anomaly, but a window into aspects of reality that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about how the universe works. From the metallic mass buried beneath the moon's surface to the vast biosphere thriving in Earth's deep interior, from ancient structures encoding impossible mathematical relationships to underground networks of life operating on billion-year timescales, we've encountered evidence that our planet and our universe harbor secrets that dwarf anything in our textbooks or scientific journals. What makes these mysteries particularly significant is not just their individual strangeness, but what they collectively suggest about the nature of knowledge itself. They remind us that human understanding, despite all our technological achievements and scientific breakthroughs, remains remarkably limited. Every answer we discover seems to reveal 10 new questions we never knew existed. Every mystery we solve opens doorways to entire categories of phenomena we hadn't even imagined. The underground biosphere suggests that life might be far more common and resilient throughout the universe than we ever dared hope. If organisms can thrive miles beneath Earth's surface in conditions that seem completely hostile to life, what might exist in the subsurface oceans of Europa or Enceladus? If intelligence can evolve along pathways so different from human development that we barely recognize it as consciousness, what forms of awareness might be operating in environments we've never thought to examine? The archaeological discoveries we've explored force us to reconsider not just what ancient civilizations accomplished, but what human potential might actually encompass. Ciudad Perdida demonstrates engineering capabilities that rival modern achievements. The genetic disk suggests knowledge traditions that may have understood biological processes we're only now rediscovering. The precision of ancient monuments raises questions about mathematical and astronomical knowledge that doesn't fit our conventional timelines of human intellectual development. Perhaps most importantly, these mysteries illustrate the danger of assuming that our current scientific and historical frameworks represent anything close to complete understanding. The angel hair phenomenon and the non-human handprints provide physical evidence of events that don't fit any of our existing categories. The mathematical relationships encoded in ancient structures suggest knowledge systems that operate according to principles we haven't yet learned to recognize. The legends rooted in reality show us how quickly documented facts can be transformed into cultural mythology, but they also demonstrate how mythological thinking might preserve truths that purely rational analysis misses. The story of Petrus Gonzalez reminds us that human triumph over adversity often transcends the specific circumstances that created it. The burial practices of medieval Europe reveal belief systems that, however strange they seem to modern eyes, represented sophisticated responses to genuine community challenges. These mysteries also highlight the interconnected nature of all knowledge. Understanding the underground biosphere requires insights from biology, chemistry, geology, and physics working together in ways that traditional academic boundaries don't easily accommodate. Solving the riddles of ancient monuments might require collaboration between archaeologists, mathematicians, astronomers, and engineers. Interpreting the genetic disk demands expertise in biology, history, materials science, and cultural anthropology. As we stand at the threshold of new technological capabilities, advanced scanning techniques, genetic analysis, artificial intelligence, space, exploration technologies, we're likely to discover that these mysteries are just the beginning. Each new tool for investigation reveals phenomena that were previously invisible, and each answered question opens up entire new categories of mystery. The implications extend far beyond academic curiosity. If we're still discovering fundamental aspects of life, matter, and consciousness on our own planet, what might this mean for our understanding of our place in the universe? If ancient civilizations possessed knowledge or capabilities that we're only now beginning to recognize, what might we learn by approaching human history with more humility and openness to possibilities we haven't yet imagined? The mysteries we've explored today serve as reminders that reality is under no obligation to conform to human expectations or limitations. The universe is vast, ancient, and filled with processes that operate on scales of time, space, and complexity that challenge our ability to comprehend them. Life finds ways to exist in every conceivable environment. Intelligence manifests in forms we're only beginning to recognize. Knowledge can be preserved and transmitted through mechanisms we're still learning to understand. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is consciousness itself. The awareness that allows us to contemplate these questions, to wonder about our place in the universe, and to feel awe in the face of the unknown. The fact that the universe has evolved conscious beings capable of investigating its own mysteries might be the most extraordinary phenomenon we've encountered. As we move forward into an era of unprecedented scientific capability and global communication, these mysteries remind us to maintain what Einstein called beginner's mind, the humility and curiosity that recognizes how much we don't know, and the excitement of discovering that reality is far more interesting than we imagined. The next time you look up at the night sky, remember that there's a massive metallic object buried beneath the moon that no theory adequately explains. When you walk across the ground, remember that beneath your feet extends a vast world of life, operating according to principles we're just beginning to understand. When you visit ancient monuments, remember that they might encode knowledge and capabilities that challenge everything we think we know about human history and potential. These mysteries aren't just curiosities to be solved and forgotten. They're invitations to expand our understanding of what's possible. Reminders that we live in a universe far more wonderful and strange than we typically acknowledge, and encouragement to keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep our minds open to possibilities we haven't yet learned to imagine. The greatest discoveries in human history have always come from people who were willing to look beyond the boundaries of accepted knowledge and consider possibilities that seemed impossible to their contemporaries. Today's mysteries might become tomorrow's revolutionary breakthroughs that transform our understanding of reality itself. So I ask you, which of these mysteries intrigues you most? What questions do they raise that we haven't yet learned to ask? And what other secrets might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment or the right perspective to reveal themselves? The universe is vast, ancient, and full of wonders we can barely begin to imagine. These mysteries are just the beginning of a journey into the unknown that will likely continue for as long as conscious beings exist to wonder about the nature of reality. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and never lose your sense of wonder at the extraordinary world we inhabit. If you found this exploration of the impossible as fascinating as I did, let me know in the comments which mystery surprised you most, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the frontiers of human knowledge. Until next time, remember, the truth really is stranger than fiction, and we're just beginning to discover how strange reality actually is.